need a clever intro.
I had a thought earlier, but I didn't write it down, and I've completely lost it.
What?
Just one little thought. All right, Adam. Welcome everyone to Idiot Seeking Village. I'm Rich. That's Adam. Adam, giddy up, jingle horse. Pick up your feet.
Another holiday voice intro.
As long as the holidays continue, the holiday-related introductions will persist.
Works for me.
All right, fair enough. Speaking of works for you, did you catch any of the FBI trying to explain how Antifa is a terror organization, but they can't explain who is involved, where it's at, or where to even begin to uproot them?
No, they actually had to go into like some form of detail for that?
Yeah, no, they had a House hearing last week because obviously NSPM 7, Trump's whole proclamation that we covered a couple weeks ago, came out. Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization. Again, domestic terror organization is not an official label in any sort of meaningful legal way. And they had one of the heads of the FBI, Director Michael Glasheen, testifying before the House Committee on Homeland Security on December 11th. And he was asked about Antifa's size, location, all this sort of stuff. And he had no answers. He couldn't answer any of the questions.
They're all splinter cells.
The best answer he could come up with, well, the investigations are active.
They're ongoing.
Exactly.
Just like JFK and MLK, they're all active investigations somewhere.
Yeah, no, he kept just basically saying it's a very fluid situation. We're still investigating. It's ongoing. But then he kind of circled back. It's like, they're no different than Al-Qaeda or ISIS. And it's like, again, what are you using to justify that? How can you say that they're Al-Qaeda or ISIS when they literally don't exist as an organization?
And usually with, the same as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, usually you have like a top wanted list.
Yes.
So who are the main guys on the list of Antifa that we're looking for? Because what if I live next door to him? Let me know. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's also, it continues to be this NSPM 7 is just the gift that keeps on giving here. So apparently journalists over at The Intercept have been sending in Freedom of Information Act requests and asking for clarification. They've been saying, hey, you guys keep using this term. Let me pull up the exact term. Yes, designated terrorist organization. And they're using that to define the Venezuelan situation, right? All those boats, these are designated terror organizations. And they kind of use it side by side with that domestic terror organization, right? That they're calling Antifa and NSPM 7 and all that. And they're saying, okay, well, for these designated terror organizations, you're conducting these unilateral strikes to execute alleged narco, and you're using this whole security apparatus justification. Does that right to do summary executions, does that extend to domestic terror organizations, of which you've labeled Antifa as one of them? And everyone just keeps passing the buck and ignoring the request. This isn't just, again, you and I talked about this last week, right? Which is what's to stop, someone from sending a cruise missile at a protest at some point that they don't like and saying that it's Antifa. Tammy Duckworth, the senator from Illinois, was out there on record talking about this, right? This isn't just you or I speculating about this, that, we have sitting senators calling this into question at the moment as well. So this is continues to get interesting. Again, we're really pushing the limits on constitutional rights, the right to habeas corpus, to be to face your accuser, to have a list of the charges against you, to defend yourself in court. And we're continuing to fuzzy that line and make everything a little bit grayer.
Yeah, it makes sense just to make it as gray as possible, because you don't want to fix the things that can be fixed. And if you want complete control, this seems like this is the way to do it.
Yeah. To go back to what I was saying before, The Intercept has asked the White House directly and the Justice Department and the Department of Defense, aka Department of War, about this. And everyone's just straight up ignored the question. They've answered other questions, but they keep ignoring this particular one, which should be the concerning thing, right? It's not just everyone. It's kind of like, hey, you can kind of connect the dots here. They're deliberately being shady about their right to commit unsanctioned murder
They
against
should just
people.
reply,
Yeah.
"We're not going to answer you, fat little piggy."
That would be, I mean, that would be a better answer than a non-answer, I think.
Well, this way they could say, "Oh, maybe it got lost somewhere," but here it'd be like, "No, little pig, you're just a little piggy, aren't you?"
They should do what Musk did after he bought Twitter and just make the press release questions that come in auto reply with a poop emoji.
God, is that what he did?
Yeah, real genius level
He
work there.
is a classic
We're
guy.
really being run by adults here, Adam.
Man, I have been, since editing our last episode and listening to it again and thinking about it, and how like the world is just consumed with either conspiracies or like false truths, just edited information. I'm just besides myself. It's incredible. And now we recently, with the shootings we had over the weekend in the United States and Australia. And like, I remember, in our last podcast talking about Netanyahu, and I do not think very highly of the man. How he says that the Australian president's an anti-Semite because he wanted a Palestinian state, because, those two things equal each other. And I think it was like a Muslim man who stopped one of the shooters from continuing his rampage.
On our man, he tackled the gunman, stole the gun. Actually, did you watch the video? It was
some of it. But I mean, I'm
wild.
assuming, I can't say that he's a Muslim or not because his name was just Ahmed. So I'm assuming he's the one who saved countless more lives being killed. And that's what I mean is like, we have taken, and these are from past conversations of ours, of like either SNAP benefits and welfare, the welfare queen, or the few people who take advantage of situations become mainstream norm. And we've always had these two sayings in our lives, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, or one bad apple spoils the bunch. And we not seem to be able to figure out which one is which. And I cannot figure out why. And as I was like thinking about all these things, it just made me think of the movie Network.
Oh, what was that one again?
Oh God. It was like, that's the Mad as Hell.
Yes. Mad as hell, and I can't take it anymore. Yep.
And I would play it right now if I know how to share it on our thing. But you could listen to that scene from the movie and you would be like, when was this written? Like last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Not that it was 50 years ago, this movie. It's the fucking same thing. $1 buys a nickel's worth of stuff today. We don't know what the Russians are going to do. I'm like, Jesus Christ, why don't you just remake the movie now? It's the same fucking thing.
Don't give Hollywood any ideas. They'll jump right on that. We'll have yet another remake.
It's crazy.
For some reason, they'll cast Chris Pratt as the lead.
But it's just mind-boggling stupidity. Like when are we going to have that mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore moment? Like, what do we have to do?
Here's the thing, though. I would say, to an extent, MAGA and Trump's election in 2016, right, 2015, excuse me, yeah, no, he got elected. When the hell was that election? November of 2015. He would have been nominated in January of 2016, or excuse me, inaugurated. I'd argue that was it, right? The problem is the worst possible person was, designated to carry water for all the rage and anger at just the systemic failures of this country.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
So
I mean, what
it?
is positively changing, right? Everything's getting more expensive. Everything's much more stressful. There's less of a future now. Our economy is even more of a bubble than it ever has been. Nothing's been. If you're worried about shit, right, going into that election, coming out of the Obama years, and pissed off about the way the country's going, and just the last 2 decades of shenanigans and fuckery, are you happy with the way the last 10 years have gone? Like, genuinely, like, is this country in a better place if you are honest about it? No.
Not even close. Yeah. Well, I need a moment like where the person who decides to carry the water is carrying for all like the right reasons to some extent. I mean, listen, nobody's perfect. There's always going to be some scummy person. But I mean, like nothing changes. I mean, you have in Congress now their Republicans' health care plan and further ACA, they're both shit. The problem is you guys refuse to fix the shit. I just, because in the movie, he's like, I would tell you to write your congressman, but I really wouldn't know what to tell you to write them. So just open, windows and just scream out, you're mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And then, thousands of people all across the country, if not, did that. But what would good writing to your congressman do you now? You're just one person out of like a million people. And
Yeah,
you're going to be like, yeah, whatever.
We continue to be sold up the river. It's what it is, right? It's our Congress people don't represent us. We talked about this already, right? There's just too few of them. It's too easy for them to be bought off. You add in things like Citizens United, which basically violated that whole principle of one man, one vote, and really perverted the whole campaign finance element and made money the primary driver of political positioning, more so than it had ever been. Right. And it already was too problematic in that direction. Yeah. You got to think there's no putting the genie back in the bottle at this point. So how are we going to move forward?
That's my question. I don't know, because I got to believe the majority of Americans are like mad as hell. And they're just like, okay, I'm pissed. I want something to be changed. Well, how am I going to do that? Because voting doesn't seem to fucking work, because I'm going to vote for this fucker and he's going to go in there and not be able to do anything, or he's not going to give a shit about doing anything. Or I'm going to vote for this fucker and he's going to do the same thing. Well, that's not a solution.
Yeah.
There has to be a solution.
I mean, to your point about being mad as hell, if anyone, you mentioned Australia, right? Terrible shooting. I think, what was it? A dozen were killed.
I think it's even more now, but yeah.
Yeah, those dozen killed and a bunch injured. Yeah, that was as of a few hours ago. And then, of course, the shooting at Brown University, which was the 390-something shooting this year. So we're setting new records. We're getting back to post-COVID. 389. There we go. There's a number. That's as of yesterday.
Congratulations, America.
Well, so 2 students killed, right? And some 9 to 10 were injured at the same time. You want to know what's really tragic is 2 of the students who were in the shooting, not the people who were injured or killed necessarily, the 2 who were in the room where the gunman entered, they were also themselves survivors of 2 separate school shootings when they were in high school.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah,
they must be like,
exactly.
I am fucking cursed. I can't escape this.
It's such a small world, and yeah, it's absolutely nuts that would be the case.
And I also wonder, I feel bad for the guy that they caught and said, yeah, that's not the guy. They
had a person of interest, but they didn't put his name out there. And I remember seeing that.
They showed his picture.
Did they
saw
really?
his face. Yeah, he was like an army guy. He was I think his name, he was transferred from maybe Wisconsin. He was a soldier. He worked in snipers. They interviewed friends of his. And I'm just like, this guy's got to go in hiding now for 6 months or whatever until you catch the guy. You plaster that guy's face all over the place. And then people forget that maybe this guy was it.
Well, I mean, they released him pretty quickly. Hopefully he doesn't suffer any consequences as a result of that, assuming, he's definitely not the guy.
Right.
Yeah, this isn't a Richard Jewell situation where they're, dragging his name through the muck and accusing him, right? He got let out pretty quickly. I mean, the same thing happened with one of the Charlie Kirk shooter. Remember that they had captured, or that, they had a person of interest, a suspect, but it was I think it was a janitor or something at the university. And they turned around and they let him go pretty quickly, and no one remembers his name at this point.
That's.
But yeah, Zoe Weissman, she was at the Parkland shooting in 2018. And the other one is Mia Tretta, who was at the Saugus High School shooting in LA.
God, the odds of that, to be in 2 separate school shootings and then be somewhere. I mean, I would say the odds used to be astronomical, but they might not be that high anymore.
Not in America.
Not if you're doing anymore. 400 basically a year.
And the problem is, of course, to kind of the conversation you're just having, right? We're mad as hell. We're not going to take anymore. What's going to be done, right? What do we get? We get some empty thoughts and prayers, statements, and that's it. That's all you get anymore, right? Gun rights advocates, at least NRA and whatnot, tend to be quiet for a day or 2 and then get right back to lobbying as they normally do, right? And look, I'm not I'll say this, right? Gun control is not so black and white. Under no circumstances do I believe that the police and the government should have a monopoly on firearms in this country. That is a terrible, terrible position to be in if you care about individual rights and freedoms and all that. That said, the typical gun owner in this country has a pretty monkey, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil when we've got troops marching in the streets and attacking, people exercising the First Amendment rights. That whole authoritarian government that we have to defend ourselves from kind of falls flat as an argument. On the other end, the wild, wild west of letting anyone with mental issues and spouting hate speech online just walk up and just acquire a gun at will with the intent to use it to hurt people. That's not a good solution either, right? And the last thing you need in any sort of regular road rage incidents as you're commuting to work or getting to some activity and you're stuck in traffic is to have someone popping off because they just had a bad day.
Right. And I think that's the problem is it's like if there is no silver bullet answer, then therefore there's no answer and it's not worth doing. That's just the idea I just keep seeing and hearing because the answer is pretty simple for gun rights. You should have a nationwide gun right laws, allow people to own guns, and start spending a shit ton of money on mental health issues. And listen, is it going to stop people from going crazy? No, because people are always going to go crazy. Just like people are always going to be racist and sexist and every which way you could think of. People are just going to be. The goal of government and everyone else is to minimize the risks. You're not going to, if you cure, prostate cancer, it's a victory. You didn't cure all cancer. Oh, then we shouldn't do it because we can't cure all cancer. You cured a fucking cancer. That's pretty damn good. You save 100 kids' lives every year. That's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I mean, you see it, Australia and Rhode Island in one weekend. One is one of 389 mass shootings this year. The other is the first major mass shooting incident in 30 years. I'm not saying harm reduction is the right way to go about things, but sometimes it's a better outcome, generally speaking, than not. And I think to what you're saying, you don't even need to revamp the laws. It's right there. It's the right to bear arms is contingent on a well-regulated militia. So let's take more of the Swiss model, right, which is a high per capita gun ownership, shooting culture, like those guys, and let's be responsible for it. You have to be a member, right, of these groups. You have to make sure that people buying them aren't Looney Toonies, right? That there's some qualifications that you're good to go, right? That you're not trying to cause harm. I mean, look, you can't confiscate the guns. There's more guns than people in this country. That's not practical. And
that's why it's so stupid. The whole thing of like
criminalizing.
They're gonna have your names. You're gonna come for your guns. You know how long they're gonna take them to capture all these guns from everybody? All those people who are trying to take the guns will be dead by then.
Yeah, and the whole you're gonna turn honest people into criminals. No, that's not a solution either, right? But maybe, just maybe, we have to stop the people who think that schools, churches, and shopping malls are the range, right, and fair game from having that kind of access, right? There's a happy medium here, and to your point, right, healthcare, having proper support and whatnot. We just refuse to move on these things, and it's idiotic at this point that we don't move. Everyone's just the major political parties are so entrenched in pushing this narrative and entrenching their position and not giving an inch on this, that there's no finding common ground, right? You think about a couple of years ago, Roe v. Wade is overturned by the Supreme Court, and you go, at any point when Democrats had full control of the legislative and the executive, they could have codified it at any fucking point. But instead, they chose to use it as a fundraising tool, as a lightning rod, right? And what's every single political email and letter that comes from the Republicans, that comes from the Democrats every single time? This is the most critical hour yet, right? This is our greatest danger. We need you to send money, right, to fundraise, to support. Every single time, they're just using it as fundraising tools. And no one actually accomplishes anything, but every single time it's the most, it's the most important election of our lives. And we have to vote for our team. Otherwise we're going to lose everything.
Yeah, you're right. 100%. It's disturbing because they don't seem to care, because the fixes, permanent fixes, don't generate money.
Right.
Mental health doesn't generate money. It makes it better for the economy but it's good health ends up, you don't need as much medical care anymore. You don't need as much this care. It was like, oh, I don't need to take all these drugs, or I get to speak to somebody and he helps me out, and I don't go binging on this, or I don't go spending money on drugs and alcohol like a crazy person. Well, they want you to do that because that keeps you in their prisons, and that keeps the other businesses going, and they don't want to fuck that up.
Yeah, too often the solution is a market solution, right? And look, capitalism is good at many things. What it's not good at by any means whatsoever is prioritizing the well-being above profits. It doesn't do that. It just simply will never do that, because that's not how it operates, right? It's all about efficiency. And so but that's not the kind of outcome that it looks for.
We need capitalism that is changed in some way that focuses on the well-being of the people. That's what it is. That's what it needs to be. And I don't know how you change it, like what you eliminate, or you put certain guardrails on it, but that's what it needs to be, because none of these economic institutions, socialism, fascism, capitalism, all these isms, none of them really focus on the welfare of everybody, or to make it as beneficial to as many people as possible. Because once again, somebody's going to always get left out to some extent. Your goal as a government is to minimize that as much as possible, not to exploit it like it seems we do.
Well, I think that's where, you're going to find arguments from people who are going to say, no, that's not the government's job. That's absolutely not the government's role, right? And the government shouldn't be involved in that. And that's where we kind of get into this situation where we live in a Wild West in a lot of ways.
But then what is the government's job? If the government is to be small, which I kind of believe in to some extent, their goal should be to regulate law and order. They don't need to fund this. They don't have to fund that. Most of the states should keep most of their money. They should focus on the military, but they should be the ones who are in charge of the guardrails of which business and commerce are done by.
Yeah, I mean, look, if that's the approach you take, right, that government's just there to enforce contracts and to provide for the national defense and nothing else, effectively. Yeah, that's a very right-wing, conservative, libertarian point of view, generally speaking. We know that deep inequality results in revolution, in political and social upheaval, and that leads to violence. If there's not going to be any sort of mechanism to ensure some sort of equity, right, in terms of outcomes,
that should be the government's job.
Well, then now they're going to say, well, now the government's interfering with my ability to maximize my returns, right?
Right, but that's what,
or redistribution, whatever.
And that is what their job should be. Not.
But they're going to say that's not. They're going to say it's. They're going to say
no, of course, because everybody's going to say that.
National defense, yeah.
But I think the majority in this country who are not have their eyes closed believe that the government's job is to manage these things. Otherwise, things turn into chaos and revolution. That's why we don't have a revolution, because usually it's somewhat
too
normalcy.
often it's people just get annoyed that people are complaining, right? Because they're like, what are you complaining about? I have things to complain about, but you don't see me doing that. And then they view the police, right, as somehow being protectors of that, because they just get rid of the protesters, right? So you don't have to hear it anymore. But it doesn't actually solve any of the underlying problems.
Right. People usually don't go protesting just for the hell of protesting.
Right.
Not something you want to really spend your time doing. Just like you just don't.
Yeah. It's, look, for about 15 minutes every year, every single person in this country, when they have to file their returns to the IRS, gets real fucking hardcore libertarian. Every single one of us does, right? For a solid 15 minutes, we're like, I'm going to fucking overthrow the government, right? And then you're kind of like, all right, but you know what? They fixed that pothole outside, so I'm pretty good to go. Right? And you kind of move on with your day. We kind of need to harness that energy on a little bit more of a consistent basis.
I think we need to believe that when you do pay that money, it goes where it's supposed to, and it's doing the job that it needs to. But you find like every year, it's like, I don't know, I pay all these taxes, I'm just getting by, and now they need more money. Well, and none of these things are fixed. Something's wrong.
Yeah. I had that conversation with a friend of mine recently. He's like, look, once you roll in government, the paycheck deductions, the state governments, sales tax, all these, I'm paying more than half my paycheck. And for what? And I said, look, the problem isn't that you're paying taxes. It's that, and you've got your thumb on it right there, is the problem is that you don't perceive yourself as receiving any benefit for paying those taxes, right? You wouldn't have any problem paying that if you were like, damn, I get a lot in return for this.
Yeah.
But the returns are constantly vilified in a lot of ways. And a lot of them also are invisible, and a lot of them are wasteful.
Yeah. Because I'd be like, okay, I have this. I'm like, but there's still like way too many food pantries. Why do we need so many food pantries? Why are these people not be able to eat? My tax money is not going into the right places, because there shouldn't be this many hungry people. They should be able to have jobs or get paid enough where they don't need to go to food banks. So somebody's giving something off the top.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Walmarts of the world and all them, right?
Yeah.
And these are some of the biggest corporate beneficiaries of things like food stamps, because those 40 some odd million people who were losing their food stamps and access to all this because of the government shutdown recently, a significant portion of them do work. And they work at these jobs where the pay is so little, or they play these games where, let's just say it takes 24 hours a week worked to qualify for benefits, right?
Yeah.
Healthcare, whatever, kind of advanced benefits. They get 23 and a half hours scheduled, and they don't get an overtime shift, right? To kind of go above that threshold. And that's it. And that happens every time. They constantly are playing these accounting games, essentially, to fudge the numbers in their benefit, which, again, their individual perspective is they're maximizing their shareholder return. They're doing a rational thing. But in the aggregate, it's detrimental for all of us.
Yes. I remember, I don't know if it was Maury Povich or one of those, it was definitely before Maury Povich became like, and he's not your father type show kind of guys, more like serious, I guess.
Okay.
And he had somebody on, this must have been like the mid 90s or late 80s, and talking about like welfare and stuff. She's like, I can't work because if I work, they cut my benefits and I need those benefits. And the work doesn't make up for those benefits that I'm going to lose. And I'm just like, why the fuck does she have to choose between both? This seems like an easy answer. But we still are fighting over that same thing 30 years later.
And yeah, I mean, this is where advocates of a thing like universal basic income really have my attention, right? They've successfully deployed this in a number of kind of more cities, counties, right? Kind of at a local level. I believe Finland or one of those Nordics has implemented it at a national level, or at least had a kind of a large scale rollout of that. It's actually probably worth it. I think you and I, coming into the new year, I want to kind of go through a lot of these economics of why the hell's everything so expensive. And I want to touch on this a little bit more depth. So right now we're kind of just shooting from the hip here. But this is where we should all have a baseline level. If you're an American citizen, you should benefit, right? Just getting access to these things. And that includes healthcare. That includes, right, some sort of stipend so you don't fucking starve if you lose your job, right? Just the way we do things is so ass backwards. And the benefits continually funnel to not us as a people, as citizens of this country. It's painful at this point. But yeah, it's, your example is perfect, right? That kind of, I think they call it the welfare trap, right? Is, all right, I get this much in benefits, but getting me a job that I'm capable of will cut my net income by like 40% or whatever, and I lose critical things, right? Or I'll make the same amount of money, but now I'm on my own for paying for healthcare or childcare or whatever it might be, and now suddenly I'm in the negative. So why the hell would I do that? And it's because Republicans especially, right, all is means testing, right? Like, oh, we want to make sure that only people who really need the benefit get it. No, dude, just give it to everyone. right? And then guess what? At the end of the year, you file it on your tax return or however, what a particular mechanism you want to do it. And by the way, if you didn't use it, you get to pocket it or just don't take advantage of it.
Yeah. I mean, if you want people to work so badly, you shouldn't make it where it's like, why would I work if I get what I get is better not working, or I get the same for not working? Encourage the person to work because he's going to get that too.
And what happens is the welfare benefits, right? The social benefits get attacked there for discouraging work. The problem is, no, they're not discouraging work. The work conditions and pay are so shitty, it's better to not be working. That's on that's on employers, right? That's on the side of capital for not fucking delivering for employees and for workers.
Yeah, 100% there. Because it's just a sad state to argue about something for decades and still have the same fucking static argument that has not changed. Just put it on replay when it seems pretty obvious.
But I think what you were kind of, to bring this conversation back to the beginning, right? And network and is I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. You know, any revolution, any sort of protest or whatever, any sort of meaningful movement results in one of two things. It either results in the change of the elite, right? And the people who are calling the shots. If you think about the American Revolution, we've got high-minded ideals that later got captured within the Constitution around how we wanted to structure the order and the power. But fundamentally, it was an economic changing of the guard. It wasn't a social revolution, right? It was, instead of British landlords and English landlords determining what our laws and rights and rules were, we had American landowners deciding that, right? That's really the fundamental change. So it wasn't a social changing of the guard, it was an economic changing of the guard.
Right.
But what we need, and this is the problem with every single one of our elections, not at the micro level, but at the macro level, is it's just a changing of the guard, right? It's just swapping in one face for another that continues to deliver the same bullshit over and over. There's no actual meaningful change to the underlying social fabric and expectations and structure around that, right? I think, what do they call that? The social contract, right? Ultimately, we have a responsibility to each other and how things are going to work out. Until we actually get, to your point, some sort of meaningful impact to the social order and social revolution and social change, that's when we're going to start to see things differ. Because at the moment, the entrenched powers that be have a stranglehold on it, ultimately, and they continue to rig the game in their favor. And what we need is different set of expectations and rules for what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, and I have a feeling a lot of them, what they do is they parade out the radical nut job who like touts all these cool benefits and all these cool things that really make either little sense or have almost no chance of being like implemented. So like, oh, see, that's the other side. I don't know. Like, no, it doesn't have to be that crazy. I'm sure there's other ways we can try, but let's try something.
Yeah, exactly. And you touch on it, right? So often it's like, oh, perfect is we let perfect be the enemy of good. It's like, oh, that'll never work. We can't change these things. It'll never work because it has this flaw or that flaw or doesn't address this. It's like, you know what? The systems and processes we have in place are not addressing these things as it is, right? They're full of flaws themselves. So why are we so beholden to the status quo and so afraid to challenge it and change it?
Yeah. I watched this crafting guy on YouTube, fairly successful guy, and he lives in Canada. And, he's an influencer or whatever, or just, he doesn't have a standard job really anymore. He used to do contracting. But he said that in order to like launch this business that he has now, and it's very successful, it was, I have to be honest, is like having health insurance no matter what allowed me the ability to take this leap of faith and this chance, because I didn't have to worry about anything, getting sick and not having health care. That's something no American has the ability of, unless you're really wealthy. And I think maybe a lot of these congressmen just don't get it or don't want to get it.
But it's their job to not get it, ultimately, right? They know whom they're bankrolled by, and they don't answer to us. The Onion had a great bit years ago, which is American citizens band together to by a lobbyist to represent their interests in government, because ultimately we're not being represented.
That would be hysterical. Like you, me, and a bunch of other people just put money into buying a lobbyist. You're like,
You know what?
represent the other 300 million people.
I think we should. I think we should do that. Let's do it. So it'll be a little viral campaign to kind of give ourselves a little kick, a little jump here.
Yeah, we're looking to lobby America to do what's right for America.
We'll start a GoFundMe.
Be a funny GoFundMe.
Let's fucking do it. Come on. Let's sort of GoFundMe on behalf of the American people.
Yeah, I don't even know how that works, like where the legalities are of like, is there a target that we're supposed to hit? And how do you hit that target? And is it just to hire a lawyer to go lobby for us?
Well, the specific lobbying firms, yeah. So we'd have to basically get one on retainer and have, let's call it a manifesto, right? A list of demands that we want them to represent in front of Congress critters on our behalf.
That'd be fucking hilarious. And the question is like those lobby groups, they're usually part of a group. So that means they're being funded by other people who will be like, yo, don't fucking listen to that one.
Yep.
We got deeper pockets than them. Like the drug lobby's like, hey, it's bad enough we got to tell you that you might get anal leakage from taking our pills. We don't want you to have to stop it altogether.
Right. I'm going to cut the anal linkage part, and I'm going to say on this, no, we're going to end. We're going to start a campaign to hire a lobbyist to represent the American people in Congress. And I think, Adam, it certainly hasn't been tried yet.
Not that I'm aware of.
And again, we're not don't let, perfect be the enemy of good.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth a shot. Let's see what happens.
I'd be interested if it's possible and what we should, like, we should follow through on that. Like, I would think this would be an interesting journey, to say the least, for sure.
Let's start digging into this after we get off the hang up here. All right, everyone, be good, stay out of trouble. We'll see you one more time right before Christmas. I think we'll try to do something a little bit more positive, Adam, to head into the holiday season. And I say I love most of you. Adam despises the vast majority of you, but between the two of us, I think we've got you covered.
So I shouldn't say go get mad as heck.
You get as mad as you want, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. See y'all later. Thanks.
Bye. Idiots Seeking Village is a production of Village Idiots Media. For more, find us online at villageidiotmedia.com or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and wherever you get podcasts.